Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I am your host, Michelle Gibbs, and I am passionate about helping scholarly mamas like you navigate your journeys with purpose so you can achieve your life and academic goals without sacrificing what matters. The reality is that scholarly mama life is multidimensional. We're scholars, yes, but we're also mothers, wives, and so much more with whole lives outside of academia. So how do we successfully navigate all this? Well, first, we need the space to embrace this unique blend. Only then can we begin the important work of becoming purposefully whole. And part of my own purposeful work is to create a space for us as scholarly mamas to grow, to reflect, and to become everything that we were meant to be. So, mama, are you in? Fabulous. Let's begin. These are our journeys of becoming. Hey mamas, thank you so much for tuning in today. Firstly, I wanted to say thank you so much for your patience with my voice. I've got a terrible season of hay fever going on and also a terrible cough as well. So apologies in advance for that. I have been trying to get some local honey to see whether that would help with my hay fever because it has been worse than usual this year. And then I was told actually the local honey really should have been taken before the season began for it to be effective. Well, I have no idea. But to be honest, I don't mind trying it because I don't really have any other option. I've been trying the antihistamines and it's still been pretty rough. So if anyone's got any tips for how to manage hay fever, please let me know. Okay, so what are we going to talk about in today's episode? In today's episode, I want to talk about whether a PhD is worth it for scholarly mamas. Now, I shared in a previous episode about how you can transform your scholarly mama journey by ensuring that the things that matter to you become non-negotiable. And I also shared in the last episode about how you can stay motivated to make your dreams a reality. You can check out those two episodes if you haven't listened to them. But in today's episode, I want to talk about whether a PhD is worth it for a scholarly mama because listening to those two episodes, it might give the impression of rigidity and inflexibility. So I wanted to share my thoughts on this question, which I get asked very often. Is a PhD worth it? And in particular, is a PhD worth it for scholarly mamas? So if you are running a bit tight on time today, I can give you the short version of the answer. And that is, it depends. But I'm sure that that's probably left you with more questions than answers. So allow me to elaborate on this topic in today's episode. As scholarly mamas, of course, we face unique challenges in pursuing a PhD. There's no denying that. There's no rule book. There's no map to help us navigate this journey. So while it's exciting and invigorating, it's also quite stressful and it's also quite uncertain because we don't have a lot of examples of how to navigate this journey. Having said that, it's natural for us to explore in our minds at least, or sometimes even beyond that, whether a PhD is worth it, and also wondering to yourself, well, how do I know when it's time to walk away? How do I know when it's time to quit? Should I quit? I am not opposed to quitting things that are not for you. I am the last person that will tell you that you shouldn't quit something if you have explored your options and you've decided that something isn't for you. I have quit things many times and I will talk about those things in subsequent episodes because I think it's really important not to give this impression that we never quit anything because that's not healthy. There are times where we have to walk away from certain things and it's healthy to do that when it's necessary. So that's kind of the reason why I wanted to talk about that in this episode because I wanted to explore, okay, so is it actually worth it? And when should I walk away? Should I walk away? Of course, everything I share is simply sharing my experience and my perspective. So this is not advice. This is not saying that you should or shouldn't make a particular decision. My perspective is as a scholarly mama myself of 3, 2 of my children I had during my PhD. And I am also saying this from the perspective of doing a PhD part-time alongside part-time work with a very supportive spouse. But I also recognize that these are questions that we all at some point on this journey of doing a PhD as a scholarly mama, we ask ourselves. And I think that's regardless of our circumstances. So what are the benefits of doing a PhD? Because you might think, okay, well, in order for me to know when to quit, I need to weigh up the pros and cons of this thing. So what are the benefits of doing a PhD? Well, the first one is intellectual growth and personal development. And this one is undisputable because doing a PhD opens your mind in a way that I don't think anything else does. It's such a unique journey and it's such a challenging journey, but one that's intellectually challenging and stimulating all at once. You become a deep critical thinker, and I think that's a good thing. You're intellectually challenged and develop so many skills along the way. Your entire PhD journey is a journey of personal growth, and that has certainly been my experience. And honestly, it's the best thing about this entire journey. How has it challenged me? How has it allowed me to grow? How have I been able to reflect on certain experiences during my PhD? And how has that taught me and helped me to become a better person? Intellectual growth and personal development are certainly benefits of doing a PhD, for sure. The second benefit of doing a PhD is that it can enhance your career opportunities. So even though I've not finished my PhD, even though I'm nearly there, I can see from my colleagues how a PhD has the potential to create a world of opportunity on the career front. I've had people I know who have been promoted within their particular fields simply by doing a PhD. However, when people say that having a PhD hasn't helped their career prospects, it's likely because they're confining themselves to the scarcity mindset of the academic bubble. And I know many people who have used their PhDs to climb career and entrepreneurial ladders of all kinds, both in and beyond academia. So the key, I think, is to think outside of the box and to remain purposeful in all things. Okay, so the next benefit, I think, of pursuing a PhD is contributing to knowledge and academia. By doing a PhD, you have actually accomplished this. You've made a novel contribution to a body of literature. And whether you decide to stay in academia or not after your PhD, it doesn't mean that your contribution wasn't still valuable. You have made a contribution to knowledge, and I think that should be celebrated no matter what. And the fourth benefit of doing a PhD is role modeling for your children. And this one is huge. I've talked about this before, I believe in my episode around my raw reflections after submitting my thesis. As a scholarly mama, pursuing such a big goal as a PhD, something so huge as a PhD while mothering, by doing this, you are literally showing your kids what's possible. You are literally showing your kids what's possible. And whether they decide to follow suit or not in the future, so they may not want to do a PhD, it doesn't really matter. That's irrelevant because the real value is in your example. That is where the value is, in your example of pursuing something that was really hard and showing your kids that it's possible to do hard things and they shouldn't be afraid of tackling challenging things or having a challenging experience. But by seeing you do it, you are showing them what's possible and you're showing them through your example. But it's not all peach and roses, is it? So we're not here to glorify doing a PhD. We need to consider what the challenges might be that are faced by academic mothers, by mothers who are literally trying to raise their kids and not just raise them by doing the bare minimum, but actually being present for their family, actually enjoying being a mom, actually enjoying the time that they have with their kids. I think that's really important. So, but again, that's my perspective. So I just wanted to talk about the challenges that are faced by academic mothers. So the obvious, balancing the demands of motherhood and PhD responsibilities. This is huge. Like, I don't think that it's even possible to quantify how hard this struggle can be. Trying to be a present mom and trying to be involved in your children's lives and their activities and their milestones and what they're doing, and just being present and available, emotionally available, mentally available to their needs. I think that is so hard to balance with the demands, the sometimes unrealistic demands of doing a PhD and, keeping up with deadlines, keeping up with literature, getting your study underway, dealing with all the ethics and all the other administrative things that come with doing empirical research, and just writing the thesis. Oh my goodness, that's incredibly difficult to do, especially if you're working as well. It's a really huge undertaking that is really, really hard to do. So balancing the demands of motherhood and PhD responsibilities is definitely right up there at the top of challenges faced by academic mothers. So the next pretty obvious challenge faced by scholarly mamas who are trying to navigate the struggle of PhD life and motherhood is having limited time for self-care and relaxation. And I think this is huge. This is so huge as well, because the PhD feels sometimes like it's unrelentless, honestly. Like it is forever. It's almost like having a huge monster that you need to keep feeding. And if it doesn't get fed, it just roars and roars and you have to feed it again and feed it again. It's a little bit like that. And I think as a mum, this is where you really have to be so intentional and say, actually, nope, I am not going to keep feeding this monster at the expense of my well-being and my self-care and my mental rest. Because it's not always about physical rest. Yes, physical rest is very important, but I think mental rest is equally as important when you're doing a PhD, to take some time back from that and just do things that bring you pure joy and relaxation and allow you to just clear your mind before you come back at it. I think having limited time to do that is what makes the journey difficult, because you don't have this abundance of leisure time to just kind of, oh yeah, I'll just have a spa day, I'll just have a nap. Because yeah, it's not necessarily an abundance of time for self-care and relaxation. The other challenge faced by scholarly mamas when doing a PhD is the emotional toll of guilt and self-doubt. Honestly, I cannot even tell you the toll of guilt. You've got the mum guilt because you constantly feel torn between PhD responsibilities, deadlines, all of that, the writing, the thinking time, all of that. And actually the things that you want to do with your kids. And you feel the mum guilt, you feel the PhD guilt, you feel all of the types of guilt you can think of. Honestly, you feel absolutely all of them. And you also, because of feeling guilt all around, you then begin to question, why on earth am I doing this? What am I doing? Do I need to be doing this? You also then feel like a complete imposter in all of the spaces that you occupy. You think you're not a good enough mom. You think you're not a good enough PhD student. And the list goes on. So that is definitely a challenge faced by scholarly mamas. And then, of course, the final one is financial considerations. So quite often doing a PhD can be a significant financial undertaking. And it's not just in the cost of doing the PhD, but also there's a bigger question here as well, that there is an opportunity cost as well to doing a PhD as a scholarly mama, because not only from the perspective of you're caught up in years and years of doing this research and you're not necessarily reaching your full earning potential during that time, but also if you are putting your kids and your family and the things that you love and self-care and all of that, your own well-being, on the back burner while you are doing this PhD, surely there's a cost to other aspects of your life, which could then have some financial repercussions. So if you don't look after yourself, you may end up not being well and not being able to work anywhere afterwards or even during your PhD. And so I think there are some financial considerations to take into account as academic mamas doing PhDs. And actually, I should also point out that some PhDs, even when they are paid by very small stipends. And these are not stipends that you can live off of. I was very blessed, and I say this with the humblest gratitude. I was very blessed to have a salaried PhD, and so I didn't have a stipend PhD. And I think that it is something to consider if you're at the point of considering doing a PhD, to think about whether you could do it. What are some financial avenues that you can use to obtain your PhD without a significant financial outlay on your part? So that's definitely something to consider. Okay, so how then do we evaluate the worth of a PhD? How then do you navigate this juncture of, is a PhD worth it? And should I be doing this? Should I not consider doing a PhD? How do you navigate that? So the first thing I think you should do in evaluating the worth of a PhD is to clarify your personal goals and aspirations. So what are the motivations behind, what are your personal motivations behind pursuing a PhD? What is your deep down inside, why are you doing the PhD? What is your why, right? Let that why help you in navigating this juncture, okay? It's different for everybody. So it's not a matter of saying, well, that's not a good why, or that's not a good reason to do a PhD. It differs for everyone. And we're not here to be casting judgment about why people are doing PhDs or why they're not doing PhDs. But that is definitely one way to help you clarify your personal goals and aspirations and help you evaluate whether doing a PhD is for you or not. The second is assessing the alignment of your goals with the requirements and expectations of a PhD. So what are your life goals? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, in 10 years? And is a PhD, one, part of that? And two, is it required to get you there? Do you need to do a PhD in order to accomplish those goals? And in pursuit of those goals, is a PhD required? That's definitely something to consider, because if you do not need to do a PhD, or if it does not align with the long-term goals that you have, you might consider that it's not worth it to do a PhD. But if it does align with your long-term goals, let's say, for example, you want to become a professor in working in academia, you might decide, actually, this PhD is the only way that I could do that. And so maybe I do need to do a PhD, and it is worth it for me to do a PhD. The second point in helping you to evaluate whether doing a PhD is worth it is to weigh the benefits against the cost. So, for example, exploring the potential long-term benefits in the academic and professional realm. So what are the benefits of doing this PhD for your professional career, your professional future? What are the benefits? If they are significant benefits, then perhaps a PhD may be worth it for you. If, however, you can progress within your professional realm without needing a PhD, then perhaps you may decide, actually, I don't need to pursue a PhD. Secondly, consider the impact on your personal well-being and family dynamics. And of course, this is central for us as scholarly mamas because, as I mentioned earlier, there is an impact on personal well-being and also potentially on family dynamics. And you need to weigh up whether that is worth it for you. Are you willing to make sacrifices in those areas for the sake of your PhD? Or are you unwilling to make sacrifices in those areas for the sake of your PhD? Is there a way that you can navigate both of these journeys without them compromising each other? And I think that middle ground is where I found myself. And I thought, actually, I do want to do my PhD, but I don't want to do that ever at the expense of my family life and my family dynamics, because that is a non-negotiable for me. So think about the impact on your personal well-being and your family dynamics. Let that help you to decide whether the benefits of doing a PhD outweigh the challenges of doing a PhD. The third point is to seek support and feedback. And maybe you have access within your university to mentorship opportunities and networking opportunities. I have had professional mentors for many years throughout my journey, and I have found them invaluable. Absolutely invaluable. Being able to speak to people who have done what you're doing, and particularly people who have navigated those journeys as a mum, I think has been so important. I've had wonderful examples and wonderful mentors who have done this, and it honestly was a lifeline for me during my PhD, by speaking to people who have done this successfully, who have shown me that it's possible to do that, but who have not done so at the expense of their role as a mom. They were still able to be a present mom for their kids. I found that invaluable. That was an example, having been in my position where I don't have that example in my own family. I don't have anybody in my family who has done a PhD, or even in my friendship circle, really, who's done a PhD. Then those mentors were pivotal in giving me tips, in showing me by their example whether I could see a way through this. And I think it's really important, if you do have access to mentors, definitely tap into those, because it will help you to decide through the support and feedback that they can offer whether a PhD is worth it for you. So the second thing I wanted to mention around seeking support and feedback is to engage with academic and personal communities for support and perspective. And this is the primary reason why I have founded the community called Scholarly Mamas. It's because I feel there is power and value in navigating this struggle as a community, and not suffering in silence and not suffering alone. And this kind of community is literally a safe space where you can seek mentorship, seek examples, watch other people and see how they've managed some of these junctures and how they've navigated them, and support each other in doing so. And so engaging with a community like Scholarly Mamas will help you to have that varied perspective, because there may be people who have navigated that journey and decided, actually, that's no longer for me, or this is why I'd made that decision. Or there may be people who have navigated that journey and have decided, you know what, this is how I was able to do it. And obviously everyone's circumstances are different, but by seeing other people and communicating and just interacting with other people who are also navigating this journey will help you to evaluate for your own self what the worth of a PhD is to you. So what are the signs that it's time to walk away? So obviously, that's not a question that some people may ask themselves, because they may come to the conclusion that actually this PhD is completely worth it and I am going to stick it out to the end. Others may be deciding, you know what, I think maybe it's time for me to walk away. But how do you know? So I would say that, and again, this is personal experience, this is not advice, but I would say if you are persistently unhappy and dissatisfied with what you are doing in your PhD or your journey or some element of it, then I think that it's perfectly normal to question whether it's time to walk away. If you're persistently unhappy and dissatisfied, you may be having an extreme physical or mental health strain. And in that case, it might be that you decide, you know what, nope, this is not for me. This is a well-being decision. I am making a well-being decision and I am going to walk away from this PhD. And I think that's a very strong and noble thing to do, because you are making that decision for yourself, literally for yourself. Perhaps there's a lack of progress and a diminishing passion for your PhD topic. Maybe, at the beginning you thought, yep, this is going to change the world. I love this topic. I cannot wait to get started on this PhD. And then you might decide, actually, I'm not making any progress with my PhD. And actually, I think one of the things to think about here is sometimes walking away from something doesn't mean that you are walking away permanently. It might mean that it's not the right time for you at the minute to do that thing. And so even experiencing something like a lack of progress or diminishing passion could be an indicator that it's not the right time to pursue your PhD. And in that case, you might think it's time to walk away, even if that means temporarily. Doesn't have to be forever. It might just mean that for now, at this moment in time, this isn't necessarily the path I need to be on. Another point to consider is if you feel it's impossible to maintain a healthy work-life blend. And I think that this is one of the biggest challenges that we face as scholarly mamas, because we're constantly juggling. I refer to this a lot as the juggle struggle, because it's not a walk in the park. It's not an easy ride. We're literally day to day having to face decisions and make choices about whether we want to take a break and spend time with our family or look after our well-being, or whether we push to a deadline, or whether we write another few paragraphs in a chapter. It's a constant juggle. And of course, you've got the pressures of deadlines and the like on top of it. So if you find yourself in a position where you are unable to maintain a healthy work-life blend, where you are able to juggle your family life and your PhD life, maybe for you, you might decide it's time to walk away. So what are the strategies for making a decision? Well, one, you need to reflect. I'm a huge fan of reflection, as you know. You need to reflect on your priorities and values. What do you care about? What matters to you? You need to get very, very clear on that, because it's no good making a decision, choosing one thing and neglecting something else that is on the top of your priority list. Like, you need to be clear. What are your priorities? What do you value? Another strategy for making a decision like this is to consult with mentors and advisors and trusted individuals. I mentioned earlier the invaluable role of really good mentors who can guide you and help you in times of need like this. And people who have been there, done that, bought the t-shirt and sold it, these are the people you want in your circle. You want people in your circle who get what you're going through, who understand the juggle struggle, who have been there themselves and who have navigated it in one way or another, and who are willing to share with you what they did, how they did it, what worked, and what didn't work. I think to have those people in your circle is invaluable in allowing you and showing you strategies for making a decision about the worth of a PhD for yourself. So the next strategy for making a decision about whether you want to pursue a PhD or not might be exploring alternative paths and career options. And I think this is a really good point, because when you know what your options are, you're very clear on what else you can do if you do decide to walk away from your PhD. It allows you to make a firm, informed decision rather than, walking away into a sea of limbo, because that's not going to help you with making a decision. So I think having maybe informal chats with people who are doing alternative careers that you may want to consider might be a good option to give you some insight into what is their day-to-day work life like? What do they do for their jobs? Is that something that aligns with your own talents, interests, skills, and goals? And do you see yourself in those alternative paths or career options? So exploring those alternatives may be a good way of helping you to make a decision on whether a PhD is worth it for you or not. And then finally, weighing up the potential regrets of quitting versus the potential regrets of continuing. And I think this is a really critical point, because whether you quit or whether you continue, you will have some feelings about it. You will have feelings about this. You won't be able to quit and walk away from anything without feeling some kind of doubt. Did I make the right decision? Is this the right choice for me? Was it a huge mistake to quit? Should I have stayed? Or if you decide to stay, should I have quit? Was this a complete waste of time? You will have feelings about it either way. So I guess weighing up the potential regrets, whether those feelings turn into regrets or not is another question, but weighing up the potential regrets of quitting versus continuing is a strategy that will help you to make a decision as to whether you want to continue or whether you want to walk away from your PhD. And so in conclusion, then, I just wanted to just encourage you, if you are in the position where you're asking yourself this question, is a PhD worth it? I want you to consider all of those points we've discussed. So the benefits of doing the PhD. What are the benefits? The challenges faced by scholarly mamas doing PhDs. And am I willing to pay the costs for doing a PhD as a scholarly mama? How can I evaluate the worth of a PhD? I need to think about my own goals and my own aspirations. I need to seek support and feedback and weighing up the benefits against the challenges. And how do I know when it's time to walk away? What has been my experience so far? And is it fulfilling my expectations of what this journey would have been like? And then what strategies can I use and employ to help me to make a decision about whether to continue doing a PhD or not? So these are the sort of things that you can do to help you come to that conclusion. Is a PhD worth it? Is a PhD worth it? Because for me, I can't say whether or not I think a PhD is worth it for you or for anyone else. I think that's such an individual decision, and one that should be made without judgment of what other people are doing, and without guilt about, the decision that you are making for yourself. So I just wanted to reinforce the importance of self-reflection and also the importance of seeking support on this journey. Like I said, I mentioned mentors. Also, I mentioned the importance of considering navigating this journey as a community. I'm so excited about launching Scholarly Mamas. I cannot wait to welcome our founding members into Scholarly Mamas very soon. I cannot wait. And I would love to invite you, if you want to be a part of a supportive community like this, where you can share your own experiences and also support other Scholarly Mamas and just navigate this journey together. I would love to invite you to be a member of Scholarly Mamas. Please do check the show notes for the link. You can join our waitlist, and when we launch officially, you could be literally already embedded in our community, because if you are going to join us as a founding member, you will get to join our community first. And I cannot wait to meet you and welcome you if that's something that sounds like it aligns with where you are at the minute. The other thing I wanted to kind of just summarize before we finish up was to acknowledge the complexity of making a decision like this, the complexity of deciding for yourself whether a PhD is worth it. It's a very individual decision and a very difficult and complex one, especially as a scholarly mama, because this is not just you deciding to pursue or not pursue something. This is you actually making a huge decision for your future and your children's future. And so as a scholarly mama, when you do have this question come up of, is a PhD worth it? I just wanted to reiterate that this is not an easy decision, and you shouldn't expect too much of yourself when you are having to navigate junctures like these. And it's completely normal to question these things. It's completely normal to ask and wonder whether doing this PhD is worth it as a scholarly mama. And so I just wanted to encourage you as scholarly mamas to make a decision that aligns with your personal well-being and your long-term goals. There is no right or wrong to the question of, is a PhD worth it for a scholarly mama? It's very individual, but I hope that by talking through some of these points today, it's helped you to reach a point where you can feel empowered to make whatever decision is right for you. The decision of whether to pursue a PhD is highly personal and depends on your individual circumstances. This episode was really to provide some guidance and support, but ultimately only you can determine what's best for you and your family. I wish you the very best in making the decision that's right for you. And if you want to be a part of our amazing community coming up, I would love to see you on the inside. Until next time, Mama, I am sending you lots of love and lots of gratitude. And I cannot believe that I have been through this whole episode and I haven't sneezed, not once. Anyway, Mama, I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if you did and you want in on this movement, why not head over to mrsmummyphd.com. You can join the waitlist for our exclusive community of smart, purposeful, scholarly mamas. We'd love to see you on the inside. Remember, Mama, these are our journeys of becoming.